to think twice about attacking this site. But that's probably not what it's all about, but there's also this idea that Iron Age sites always occupy this kind of in-between zone between parts of the landscape. So these people were farmers, and they would have been farming this landscape behind us. They're fields that were producing the crops that they're processing on this site.
Shipwreck here, and I think it was a shipwreck that had lots of whiskey and beer and things on it. But one of the mysteries is that the silver from the captain's cabin disappeared, and the story is that a local man snuck onto the boat and stole the silver, and he didn't know what to do, so he hid it in a rabbit hole.
Right.
And then he went away.
I forgot where the rabbit hole was.
So somewhere
along this coast you'll be getting an awful lot of people out with a metal detector.
Somewhere in Daly Bay there's a rabbit hole with silver stuff down it.
Little pottery in this part of Dumfries and Galloway, in this part of the southwest. For some reason, that's something that's different to other parts of this country. Even further north on the west coast of Scotland, you get lots of pottery in the Iron Age, but very little here. So one of the things that makes it quite a difficult area to study is that there's not much to tell you what was going on. So you're finding, just stones and hearths and that kind of thing, and we often have to kind of infer what was happening from things like cereal grains that we find in the soil samples. So
a few things with nickel here.
Start getting lots of these things built, and this is one of these examples of, everyone's heard of Motte and Bailey castles, haven't they? In Galloway, we tend not so much to have the Baileys, but certainly the Motte mound, which is this big earthen mound which would have held a timber castle with a timber stockade around it. So again, this is another example of a site that's never been excavated, so we don't know too much about it. You can see this neck of land, which is almost like a causeway that you walk into from the field onto the motte itself. And then on the outside of it, you've got all this spoil here, and there's lots of stone and earth here. And I just wonder sometimes whether that isn't the remnants of a much earlier monument, like the one that we've just been at. The promontories would be like that. So that's the field up on the hill here. And this is the sea, the coast down here. You can see the rocks down on the shore.
Sorry, which one is it?
It's the one in the middle. Yeah, so
not the one.
There's 3 stories attached to this one where people went along to dig up treasure and came foul of terrible things. So I think the first one cut his foot off with a spade. The second one was spooked by the sound of the sea and ran away. And the third one, a grey lady appeared and told him that if he didn't stop digging on her house, then he would come to a horrible end, and so he did stop.
Up at Daly Bay there, you see, again they've chosen a similar sort of spur of land. It's right on the coast, separated from the farmland. And it's this sort of naturally defensive location, so it looks impregnable, doesn't it? I mean, it looks like quite an intimidating position to occupy. It came fully formed, so someone's arrived here knowing how to build one of these things from elsewhere, probably from the Western Isles or further north.
So would this just be from like one household?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So again, we'll say a little bit more out on the site there, but the reason I'm particularly interested in this site is that Brochs almost never have 2 entrances. now that I've sort of given you the very simple explanation of what a broch is, I'm going to confuse things now by adding all the complications in with this site. So you can see what we've got is a roundhouse effectively. So this is, this is the living space that we're standing in. We're not entirely sure, obviously, because we've not fully excavated this, but we think we're probably standing on at least a metre, if not more, of rubble. So, it goes down a good long way still. And then obviously you can project that up at least 2 to 3 times the height of the walls as they're standing. So really quite a substantial building. Okay, so obviously this is the Mull of Galloway. I'm sure everybody knows the Mull. But probably what you don't know is that this might be the biggest Iron Age enclosure in Scotland, potentially. Again, I've got this LiDAR imagery that I was talking about earlier when we were up at Castle Ban there. And you can see this is the high resolution model of the peninsula. You see, we've just come down here and we're standing just by this neck of land here. These are called East and West Tarbet. Tarbet being the name for an area where you can drag a boat up over the land and get into the next bit of sea. So it's this thin neck of land that we're standing on here. And you can see this line cutting it off there. That's this rampart behind us here. And then you'll see further on, we'll look at next, this big long sinuous snaking line here, which is another major earthwork, which we think is probably Iron Age in date, in which case it's enclosing all of this as a major promontory fort. So it's one of the biggest prehistoric enclosures in the country. Yeah. That's it. I'm speculating. And I think the reality of the situation is that we've probably got a combination of things. So I suspect that these earthworks were built in the Iron Age originally. This rampart's a bit different again. You can see it's got a slightly different style. It's not quite as monumental as the one we looked at before, but it's certainly multi-phase, this one. So again, because the site was excavated about 20 years ago, we've got some records of what this thing looks like. And again, this is one of these section drawings, and you can see all of these drawings join up together. So if you imagine this all as one big long section line, you can see that there's banks and ditches and more ditches and bank in the middle and another ditch. And basically these lines that you can see in there are different periods of infilling and construction. So essentially what that tells you, without going into all the details of it, is that there was an original ditch cut with a bank beside it to create the first defence, but then another one was added that started to fall down, and then there was a ditch cut through the remains of that earlier dilapidated rampart. So this has been sort of maintained and refurbished and rebuilt over quite a long period of time. Control.
I still would have thought that would have been the other way around in my head.
Yeah, well again, I mean, it's demonstrating what goes with what, because there's multiple ditches and banks here, so which ones were in use together. So that's the thing that it goes quite well. But you can see, again, there's the problem of erosion here, so the earthwork's very well preserved on that side of the field, but you can see where the castle are starting to wear it away. And on this side here, it's equally massive, it continues to this side, but it's almost gone. It's been worn away, so we're losing it, and that's partly why we're looking to get these dates while we can.
Is there any obligation on landowners to look after these things?
No, I mean it is scheduled, which means
I think it was the 1870s maybe, and Kennedy was the local gamekeeper, and he used to use it for trapping ravens. So it was built to catch ravens, and isn't an archaeological or terribly old thing at all.
When was the tour of the wells?
I think it's the 18th, 17th or 18th of September.
Out to Pete. I mean, I don't know what other people have felt, but I thought this has been absolutely fascinating, and I'd really like to thank you ever so much for doing this, because it's been knowledgeable, but also I mean, it's been at a level that it's possible to absorb and take on. So thank you very much for that, and thank you so much for organising it. It's been
No problem
really
at all.
fun.
Special thank you to Graeme.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.